After a back and forth of self-nut kicking, Republicans have now decided to elect a Speaker of the House. So the Freedom Caucus finally got tired of kicking themselves in the nuts, and then the Republican establishment finally got tired of kicking themselves in the nuts, and eventually they came together and decided upon a Speaker of the House. And now that new Speaker is a guy named Mike Johnson. I'm not going to pretend that I know very much about Mike Johnson, but I will only tell you that from what I initially have heard from this guy, I am very impressed. Before I tell you why, here's a clip of Mike Johnson accepting his role as Speaker of the House.
All my colleagues here, what I told the Republicans in that room last night, I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear. That God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it. 62, that our national motto, "In God We Trust," was adorned above this rostrum. And if you look at the little guide that they give tourists and constituents who come and visit the house, if you turn in there to about page 14 in the middle of that guide, it tells you the history of this. And it says very simply, these words were placed here above us. This motto was placed here as a rebuke of the Cold War era philosophy of the Soviet Union. That philosophy was Marxism and communism, which begins with the premise that there is no God. This is a critical distinction that is also articulated in our nation's birth certificate. We know the language well, the famous second paragraph, that we used to have children memorize in school, and they don't do that so often anymore, but they should. G.K. Chesterton was the famous British philosopher and statesman, and he said one time, America is the only nation in the world that is founded upon a creed. And he said it's listed with almost theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. What is our creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident.
Even after that speech, as good as it was, you might be thinking to yourself, why do I care? Who cares? Just another politician. I want to tell you why I don't think so. But by the way, you should know I posted about this on my social media, and that's kind of the general response that I got from a lot of people. Whether it was right or left, who cares? It's just another politician. So you might argue that the only reason I care about another politician occupying another useless position in Washington is because I am a Christian and Mike is a Christian. I would turn that around on you and say perhaps the only reason you're saying that and the only reason you say you don't care is because you are not a Christian. I'll take a moment to argue why I do think you should care, regardless of why you say you don't care. First, let me suggest that I understand it's almost a losing battle to argue that you should care if your argument is I don't care. It's hardly a position of any intellectual integrity. I don't care might as well be I am lazy. I don't think for myself. I have a Netflix show to watch. In other words, I pretend not to be concerned so I don't have to actually contradict my belief system because that takes effort. All those things are perhaps the worst kind of head-in-the-sand response to the present state of our culture. Why should you care? Because our culture is in complete collapse. That's why. Our culture continues to struggle under the weight of being found upon Christian values and ideas and the pressure of an anti-Christian secular worldview that continues to chip away at those ideas. You can argue that it is the church itself that has caused this falling away. I'm not sure that's true, but even if it is, the numbers are clear. People are no longer attending church in the same way that they used to. At the same time, we see people fall away from religious observance. We are seeing suicide rates skyrocket, drug use skyrocket, anxiety and depression skyrocket, mass shootings, and more. Ask yourself if you really believe that legal gun ownership is the reason more mass shootings are taking place. Or could it be that we have a hole in our soul? This is why I included this announcement about Mike Johnson being the speaker in Bible study with Democrats. An honest skeptic has to acknowledge the need for God and religion in Western society based upon the sickness of our culture. But Democrats don't. Mike Johnson is labeled a Christian nationalist or right-wing extremist because he quotes the Bible. Let's get the lay of the land here real quick. Dress your boy like a girl, chop off his privates, fabricate a fake vagina, and give him an experimental cross-sex hormone, and you're not an extremist. The guy reading the Bible, he's the extremist. Sure. This is why I saved this last story for Bible study with Democrats. Democrats are the ones who say they care about people. If there is any sliver of humanity in them at all, they'll put aside their bias against Christians and Christianity and admit the stats have already been put forth in such a convincing manner that it's really not arguable. Religious people are happier, less suicidal, and more charitable than any other subsection of society. In other words, Christianity is good for our society. And since all religions are not made the same, let me be really clear. I'm not arguing that all religions are good. I am specifically speaking about Christianity and its benefit to culture. But let's also not make the mistake of thinking that there is any such thing as an irreligious person. I don't care if you call yourself an atheist. Everybody is worshiping something. The only question is what are you worshiping? And is it worth worshiping? Scientific naturalism puts your faith in a whole bunch of theoretical positions, none of which can actually explain the origin of life or the origin of the universe. Christianity, on the other hand, not only does both of those things, but it also provides a moral basis by which you can live a life of human flourishing. The point is not do religions matter, it's simply which one matters the most. The godless kind of self-worship we see in our politics today is part of the problem. Today, we find a recipe for rejoicing, and that reason is Mike Johnson. He's a breath of fresh air. His unapologetic desire to express his personal faith should be refreshing to everyone. For once, we have a politician who is not willing to lie. I know, crazy, right? I know many will reject this, but there is a large incentive to push away your belief system and to pretend that you don't have one when you get into politics. Maybe not in the past, but certainly today, all of your handlers are going to tell you, there's a good way to practice your religion, and that's privately, because you don't want to alienate your constituents if they don't happen to share your beliefs. So be very quiet about it, in other words. For politicians who fight against that and rather express their faith openly and publicly, they are committing an unparalleled act of courage. Moreover, they may even be committing an act of unparalleled love. If you believe, as Mike Johnson does, and as I do, that the Christian faith connects people to Christ and helps them in this life and in the next, then you will want to share it as much as possible. When you believe that our society could be so much better and many more people would flourish in society if they valued Christian ideas, you would want a guy like Mike Johnson to come to power. More importantly, when you see a guy say stuff like he has, you get the sense finally that we have a politician that might actually tell you the truth. Check it out.
Someone asked me today in the media, they said, it's curious, people are curious, what does Mike Johnson think about any issue under the sun? I said, well, go pick up a Bible off your shelf and read it. That's my worldview. That's what I believe. And so
it's things like that that make me more hopeful than ever before that our country can change. Even if you disagree with him or hate the God he believes in, which by the way is a little weird if you don't think he exists, it's possible to know that Johnson seems bold and seems honest. That's the impression you get when you hear him. We'll have to see if he disappoints like most of them, sure. But at first glance, I like what I see, and it seems different from the typical narcissistic slime monsters that DC tends to produce. That's why those who oppose him or pretend that his appointment is no big deal need Jesus. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and go with God.
So you just got done watching a small excerpt of a much larger episode. You can find the link to that full episode down below in the description of this video. So you definitely want to check that out, because if you like that clip, you'll like the much larger episode. And while you're at it, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and click that little bell to be notified when great new episodes of Indie Thinker come your way. Thanks for watching.